Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the ORCID workshop. Um, we maybe we'll give a few more minutes for anyone else to join, and then we can get started. Mhm. Okay, so just in the interest of time, because we only have an hour for the workshop, maybe we'll get started. And I am very pleased to introduce you all to Toby Malone, Dr. Toby Malone, I'm sorry, who will be facilitating our workshop. And yes, please take it away, Toby.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate the introduction and I appreciate the invitation to be here. Um, yeah, I'm very pleased to talk to you today about using ORCID for research impact and to talk to you about how this can be leveraged for your careers and how this is becoming much more of a standard throughout multiple fields. And so this is something you should be using. The QR code there on the screen now, I'll have it at the end as well, and I'll be sharing these slides with Jessica after the presentations. But if you'd like to follow along or you'd like these slides for your reference, you can grab them there. So let's get going. Okay, so just a bit of introduction to myself. My name's Toby Malone. I am the Research Impact Librarian here at TMU Libraries. And so my job is to spend time with knowledge mobilization, ensuring that people's research is visible and available to them at all times, to ensure that their research is discoverable and effective. And so I'm also a liaison librarian here at TMU. I work in English history, politics, and policy studies, as well as information on open access and repositories. So I spent a lot of time doing a lot of this stuff, and I am a former faculty member myself. I was a theatre historian for a long time before I moved over to libraries. So at the moment, one of the major projects that I have is the facilitation of ORCID on campus here at TMU. And so if you are part of the TMU community in particular, you may have heard from me. If you're not, if you're a Bridging Divides member from elsewhere in the network, you obviously this is the first time we've met, and I can help to a little bit more limited extent, but I'm certainly happy to pass on this information. And there is my contact information right there. Okay, so in terms of a complete researcher profile, this may seem to be a distraction or an irritation or something of a nuisance to think of a researcher profile out there in the world, particularly given the fact that a lot of research changes often. So it means there's a lot of maintenance to get your work up to date. It means that sometimes there'll be a platform that is recommended, like the Canadian Commons CV, which then becomes obsolete after a little while, and then you feel as though that work is lost, or it will be a poor platform, something like that. And then there'll be other things like social media, such as Google Scholar, for example. Those are those kinds of academic social networks. You may have seen academia.edu or ResearchGate, which are both relatively predatory, not great. I'm happy to talk about that later on. But researcher profile essentially makes sure that you're available on the internet to people who want to read your work, and not and more than that, they can find you and find the work that you've done and find work that you have done that they weren't necessarily searching for. And so that becomes very important because you want to make sure that your work is discoverable. If it's discoverable, then it's citable, and citation is a fairly important element in the work that we do. And within the researcher identifiers, I'll talk about a few of them today. That includes things like a Scopus ID or a Web of Science researcher ID. Each of these are owned by certain companies who have their own stake in the profits behind referencing and indexing their own collections. Sometimes it does mean that there are multiple places where you can have a researcher profile. Some are more reliable than others. For example, academia.edu used to be very, very useful until they put it behind a paywall. Now you can only get access to the metrics if you pay, which is okay. But we try to make sure that we're emphasizing areas which are open access to you. ORCID has become kind of the de facto researcher identifier out there, ORCID standing for the Open Researcher and Contributor ID. And I'll talk a lot about ORCID today, about why it's important and how to set it up, and what's important there. As I said, there are lots of different kinds of areas. ORCID, Google Scholar is, despite the fact that it is not necessarily going to be here forever, and Google seems to have abandoned it. There's no support that's available for Google Scholar. It's essentially all automated. It's still very useful because people do use it. It's very, very convenient. There's a lot of information on there. Maintaining a Google Scholar profile should be a no-brainer. You should have one, and it should be up to date if you can, and you can set that to update automatically. Scopus ID and Web of Science Researcher ID are also ones that you probably have publications in each of these areas. You can access those by going through your library website. If your library, TMU Libraries, does subscribe to both Scopus and Web of Science, check for your own institution. But you can log into those and see if your publication's there. You can create a researcher profile and attach your work to it. This kind of minor labor means that your work is discoverable all in one area. Also, if you're a member of the TMU community, we have RShare, which is the institutional repository, which is maintained by librarians. Each institution will have an institutional repository of some kind. This is becoming more and more important. The tri-agencies, for example, under granting, require you to have a place to store public data. And so RShare for us is that for publications, and we have Borealis for research data. So if you need to archive that, and I can help with all of that. So in terms of what ORCID means at TMU, ORCID was a relatively underused tool here at TMU up until the beginning of this year. So ORCID was optional. TMU has had a major change over the last 3 years. As everyone here from the community will know, we've had a name change, and the name change has thrown everything into chaos in terms of how we're identified. So a lot of people who have everything set up perfectly under Ryerson are now forced to go back and change to TMU, and that has not been automatic. So in terms of these researcher IDs, we want to make sure that it's up to date as possible. One of the things that we had was we were essentially trusting our researchers to go ahead and set up their own ORCID without any kind of real guidance, and that did not lead to particularly good effects. What it meant was that the people who were set up with an authorized verified TMU or Ryerson account numbered at about 25% of our faculty community. So only about 25% of our 1,100 faculty members had an active, properly reporting ORCID profile. And that was a problem because obviously when we run reports, it says you only have 250 or 300 active members. We have 1,100 faculty members, so we had to see how we could change that. One thing that we could do, and I'll talk about it more as we get there, is that we're members with the through CRKN. We're members in the ORCID Affiliation Manager program, which allows us to help manage people's ORCID profiles and to add verification text to it. So we launched the ORCID Affiliation Manager program in January of 2025, and went from 250 active members or thereabouts, about 25% of faculty, up to about 80%. So our numbers have exploded here at TMU. So as you can see here, on the chart here on the right, you can see these are all the people who have added a new ORCID account this year, dwarfing all of the other years combined. And this has been due to a concerted effort from the library and my office in Research Impact to invite people to join ORCID and also to join with the verification and the affiliation manager, which has also meant that I can update it for you. So that's an added bonus. So before I get into ORCID, I'm just going to hit some really common FAQs that people bring up just about every time I talk to them about ORCID. I do a lot of cold outreach when it comes to this. So I'm reaching out to people. They're seeing my name in their inbox. They're saying, who is this person who is bothering me? And they sort of feel as though it's spam and unnecessary. But the question that comes up all the time, why do I need an ORCID account? It's not compulsory. None of this is compulsory. It's very strongly recommended, and I have the support of SRC deans across the campus in terms of agreement that this is a useful thing. This does factor into the world university rankings, and I know that's not a priority for everyone, but it sure is a priority for the university. So the more ORCID IDs that we have, the more information that's out there, the more discoverable you are. The more discoverable you are, the better your metrics will be, the better your citation downloads will be. All of these things are very hard to maintain and manipulate. Sometimes you can game them, but generally, the more information you have out there, inevitably, it means that the more you will have to build. This is particularly important if you are an early career researcher. As an early career researcher, you need to start building metrics from day one. And you may not think about it now, but when you get to your tenure process, and you get to get your 5 years in and you're starting to think about metrics and to think about research impact, you need to be able to quantify that. And quantification comes from metrics. You can also talk to me in my office about how we can help facilitate your research impact, but setting up your profiles early is really important. There are also a growing number of journals and conferences and grant applications that require you to have an ORCID. This is really important because then your ORCID will be attached to that grant, will be attached to that area. Sometimes peer review. You'll get if you're a peer reviewer, you'll need to have your ORCID ID, and then that will be attached into your account. And it will reflect the fact that you're a peer reviewer for a particular organization. The other really important thing is name disambiguation. So you may have a very unique name, which is great. So for example, I have a fairly unique name in academia. No one else has the same name as me, so people don't get confused that I'm someone else. However, if your name is John Smith, for example, which is always my go-to example, if your name is John Smith, there's probably another John Smith, and that person probably works in a different field. Worse still, if they work in the same field, and if you're both civil engineers and one works in Toronto and one works in Winnipeg, people will assume either you're the same person or they will get confused. And so ORCID ID gives you a disambiguation. It ensures that people know that you are who you say you are. And this is particularly important because an ORCID will follow you from career to career. So if you take a new job across town at another institution or even in industry, your ORCID ID will come with you. And so if people can see, oh yes, there's citations for this person at Simon Fraser University, but I can see from their ORCID, they used to work at Simon Fraser, and that's why it's the same person who is now at the University of Waterloo or whatever we do. So it's really important that you are identified as who you are. It's also one thing I want to note here is that when you sign up for an ORCID or when you affiliate with Affiliation Manager, you will get a notification that you have to agree to your data being processed in the United States. That's because we're part of the ORCID US consortium. There is not a distinct ORCID CA consortium for data storage yet. We'd love to think that there will be one day. There is a distinctive one for Australia. There's a distinctive one in Asia, but there is not one currently in Canada. So our data is not stored on ORCID. Data is only, ORCID is a link out program. So you link out to your publications and to your grants and things like that. So the data is processed there, but it's not stored there, and it's managed by a not-for-profit. It's not government run. Obviously, things change, but for right now, we can strongly recommend that this is a good thing. Okay, so I have an account. Do I have to populate it? Can I just leave it empty? Can I just jump through the hoop and say, here you go, here's my ORCID. I agreed to sign up, but now I'm going to have it. And you'll see this quite often where you'll have an ORCID account that has a name on it and nothing else. No affiliation, no content, no publications, nothing. And I understand that time is the most valuable thing that we have as faculty members because no one has enough of it. So people look at this and say, I do not have time to populate this account. And I get that. I really do. Um, but it is really important because the majority of ORCID accounts are empty or private. Private is even worse. You want to make sure that if you have an ORCID account, it's set to everything, set to as much public availability as possible. Because if you're private, then your information does not appear in reports. That's a problem for us at our end because we want to make sure that your information is discoverable so that we can then report on it and show how many members that we have active. So these public accounts are very important. By populating your account, it goes back to the disambiguation idea. The more information you have that shows your field of study will make it very clear that you are not the same person who is also working in sociology when you're working in biological sciences. That kind of genre connection will also help disambiguate you. And the institutional affiliation is important. We want to know, particularly, so this is, I'll often use examples for TMU because that is my everyday, but we want to make sure that we have a claim on all of our TMU faculty because we're proud of the work that our TMU faculty are doing, and we want to make sure that that is reflected in reports. So if you have a link on there, one thing that they have, and I'll show you this in a minute, is that there's a new function that's just came out this year, which is a verified domain. So it will show the domain of the university that you work at is in @torontomu.ca, but it won't necessarily show your email address. And this is a way of ensuring that you get a verification that shows that you work there, but doesn't display your email address to the world to see. You can show your email address if you really want to, but you don't have to. So that's very important. So ideally, an ORCID account is a comprehensive account of your publication output. I always put my ORCID. I always suggest people put their ORCID into their email signature because it's reliable, it's well recognized, and people know that that is something that is not going away, as opposed to if you put things on ResearchGate, which is really unregulated and sort of all over the place. So having ORCID, I always suggest having, and this is comprehensive as possible, to treat it like it's a digital CV. So you have all of your stuff. You can link out to wherever you want, publication pages, your own personal website, wherever you like. But having this as a central hub for people to find your information is really important. Okay, I don't want to manage my account, or I don't want anyone else to manage my account. Is this a problem? No, it's not a problem. It's people sort of think that when they're setting up an ORCID, particularly if they're going through us at TMU or from my office, that they're like, oh, so you want to control my content? No, of course not. That is not what we're trying to do. We're also not trying to tell you you have to control your content. We want to we're here to help you, and we're here to make sure that this is an easy process, and we'll work with you however you like. Some people have the kind of personalities that they really want to control what they've got going in, and I fully understand that. And so they say, no, there's certain kinds of language. I want to make sure it's in there. Some people will just send me their CV and say, I don't mind, throw it all in there. Do it for me. I don't have time, and I'm happy to do that too. So it's not a problem. Ordinarily, account management in terms of this way would be restricted to TMU community members. I can probably update some content for you, but as I'll show you in a moment, any physical updates that I do through the affiliation manager is tagged as TMU. So that's a slight sort of hiccup if you're coming from another institution. However, I'm very happy to work with you to make sure that it's set up. One thing that I often do is I will get into a one-on-one meeting with a faculty member for half an hour on Zoom, and I'll just take them through all their researcher profiles, and I'll say, click there, do this, add this, activate this, and it'll all be set up. And the best thing is then um, it starts updating for you so automatically as soon as new things come up. Last one. Will you change my account without my permission? Will you go in and start monkeying around with things and adding things that I don't like? Of course not. No, absolutely not. We will never make any changes that you did not personally request or that I did not personally request permission for. So if you have an account and you don't want any changes, you can just say, no, please don't change my account. And of course, I won't change it. And I won't even do it. I'm not going to do it until you specifically ask me to come and do it for you. So yes, so we will not change your account without your permission. And worst comes to absolute worst, if there's a change that happens to your account and you don't like it, you have control to go in and delete or hide any kind of changes that are made. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I would strongly recommend in the background here, if you're interested, to sign into your own ORCID account to begin your own maintenance. So as I work through this sort of stuff, go to orcid.org and you can either sign in with your existing account. Um, if you don't have an account, you can see you can create a new account, register now to see that option there. You can sign in through your institution. If you received a affiliation manager link from me at some time in the past, I've sent out a lot of those to members of the TMU community. You can click through that link to get there. But I would suggest, as I go through and show you some of these tools, to just click around and just try to update your account. Sometimes it'll take a little longer than we maybe have, but I think that's a useful thing to do. So I'm just got an example of a page here, and this is one of our colleagues here at TMU who has a very prolific publication record and has a well filled out ORCID page. So I just want to show you a couple of little features. You can see here that Anatoly has a biography. This biography is optional; you don't have to put one in, but again, it's good for disambiguation. It's good to sort of explain what you're up to and what your research is. We can see here on the left the verified email domain, which is what I mentioned before, and that shows that he is a verified member of the TMU community, and we see that little green check mark that means that this is an official member of our community, but it does not show his actual email address. We can see down on the left we have some other IDs. Anatoly has connected his Scopus author ID with ORCID and also has associated GitHub. There's a lot of different ways you can associate your Web of Science. You can associate different kinds of IDs that ensure that if people want to look at his other publications, things like Scopus are available there. You can also add websites and social links, and if you wanted to link out to, say, an SSRN page or a different page, a page for bridging divides, a page for projects that you're working on, you can also do that. There are keywords, so you can link the different kinds of studies that you're doing, and that you can update that with as many keywords as you like. And as you can see under employment on Anatoly's account, we can see that that he has the source of that. This has come from the affiliation manager. So we have a green check mark showing that that TMU has added this affiliation that shows that he's an official member of this community. If you haven't added it, had that added through the affiliation manager, then you would say the source would be your name. And so obviously there's no oversight here. You can add whatever you want, saying you did whatever. If you want to write that you're the king of the universe in there, you can. But because it's, say, the source is you, it makes it less reliable. So having it through the TMU with the check mark makes it more reliable. Okay, so on a quick tour, I've got this link here to go through, but I've already done this. I'm just going to give you a quick tour through my account. And I'm only doing this because you obviously, well, I don't have to ask anyone's permission to use my own account. So I'm going to do that right now. So you can see here, this is what the ORCID account looks like with in the back end. So you can see there's a lot of different kinds of ways that you can look at it. Here at the top, you can see you're managing your ORCID record, switch to another account. I have a lot of faculty members who have given me permission to manage their accounts. I'm not going to show you their accounts, but yes. You won't see this one up here, but there's different kinds of things here. This number here, the 16-digit number, is your ORCID ID, and that is your permanent ID. You can see there are lots of different and there's so many variants of numbers. They'll never run out of numbers. And so if you give someone this link or even just that ORCID ID, people will be able to find you. If you Googled that number, it would show up into your ORCID. You can see different emails and domains. I have some obsolete ones, one from Western, a personal one, which I've got hidden. I've got my personal email exposed, as well as I've hidden one verified email domain. Social links, I have a LinkedIn link over here, as well as other IDs, Web of Science Researcher ID, G&D, Scopus. So different kinds of researcher IDs that people can find my information. I have different kinds of keywords and countries that I'm affiliated with, as well as a long biography, probably too long. It's really up to you as to how you do it. You can also see that I've taken advantage of the affiliation manager by updating all of my employment. So everything here with a green tick was added by the affiliation manager. And the good thing about the affiliation manager is I can do it through a spreadsheet very quickly, and it's essentially a 5-minute process of putting your information into the spreadsheet and then doing a bulk upload. So it's very quick. It's not manual. So you have a lot of information here. There's education and qualifications. So you can see there's different kinds of uh, again, I can update employment qualifications and service through the affiliation manager, and then you can see all these different kinds of things. And then we have professional activities. You'll notice here, this source here is myself because I've added this individually. With all of this, you can edit any kind of area, and you can add any kind of content that you want and make it visible or invisible. Um, there are also options for funding if you've received grants. If you're receiving a tri-agencies grant, you do need to display the result of that grant publicly somewhere. This is a good way to do it. And so you can. There are ways of doing it through a search and link function, and then you can also add them manually, and you can see all of these have been added manually because these were minor awards that I received at previous institutions. You can also feature works. This is a brand new thing that I haven't set up yet. I should probably do that because at the moment, what it'll do is will prioritize the most recent items that you've got. So, and I have something in the chat here. There's a question here. Is there a required format template for the spreadsheet to bulk upload research activities? Yes, so it has to come through my office. So for the spreadsheet, there is a template that the affiliation manager provides, and so it's putting that information into that spreadsheet. But if you have items like if particularly dates, names of positions, names of institutions, things like that, then I'm able to very easily pass that and put it into the spreadsheet as we set up. Thanks for the question, Mo. I appreciate that. You can see there are other ones here. So the source of some of these are verified, which means that they've come in through an automated updating through Crossref. There's some here, and some that I put in. The affiliation manager comes to, so I am the affiliation manager. Affiliation manager has to be through your institution. So if you're at TMU, then I am I run the affiliation manager at TMU. You would need to check if you're not at TMU, then your institution may be have opted in or may not have. So some universities, some larger universities have access, and some choose not to use it. So, but very happy to answer questions about that. Okay, and so you can see, so I have my account set up, and so there's a lot of this stuff. I don't want to pause here too long, but I just wanted to give you that insight. Okay, so in terms of visibility, I think this is very important. I think setting to everyone is very important, and I would always set up your institutional verified domain if relevant, and always set up your affiliation as visible. This really helps the reports. It really helps us to be able to discover you, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. Demonstrate that you work at the institution you work at, even if it's just the verified domain. That's really helpful and something good. In terms of ideally, you would also link all of your publications and grants, and you can put those. And essentially, you can see here on the left the green eye icon. When you click on that, the drop down will give you everyone. Trusted parties are only me. Trusted parties is something you probably shouldn't use because you need to set up your trusted parties list. So if you have a list of people who are in your research team who and you want to add them all as trusted parties, then only them will be able to see the information in there. But it really isn't very useful because no one really bothers to set up these trusted parties lists. Setting only me, as you can see on the right here, turns into a red eye. It means that when you check your account and in the public view, you won't be able to see anything that's listed. We generally suggest that you don't use that. But it is up to you as to, like, as I say, biographical information, keywords, service, and awards. If you don't want people to see them, then you can just set them like that. You can also, if you notice that there's a publication that's being automatically added to your account, and you don't want that a publication there, I would suggest setting that to only me, not to delete it, because if the bot notices that it's missing, it'll add it again. So just making sure of that. In terms of adding content, we have this search and link wizards, and so on my page I was showing you some of the options for the areas, and you can see here with this add button, you click the drop down. So we have on the left we see the drop down for the grants section, and on the right we see the drop down for the publications section. And the search and link wizards are really quite useful. You do have options to add manually if you have an item that is not indexed anywhere, or if it's published on a website or something like that, so it's not an academic press. Then you can add them manually. But the search and link option is a very good one because what it does is it gives you access to around 18 different wizards or different indexes that will automatically show you all of your publications that are currently in their list, and you can add those in. And then if future publications come into their list, it will add it automatically. So new publications, particularly if you're publishing with places like Elsevier, will automatically go in. So you can see here's an example of some of the search link wizards. There's 17 here. It's actually up to 18 now. There's one missing. And so some of the best ones include Crossref. And so what is essentially all you do is you click on the blue title of the wizard, and then you authorize access. It will sometimes give you a list of publications that it's found. Sometimes there'll be nothing in there, and so it really depends on your field. So I work in the humanities, so Crossref and DataCite, MLA International Bibliography, Scopus, Elsevier, Web of Science are all very useful. They get lots of good ones. You may also find if you're a researcher who has published in Europe or in Asia, there are certain kinds of so JLC is good for Asian work. HAL is good for information in Europe, and if you're publishing in medical fields, then Europe PubMed Central, for example. So it really depends on you. So you can go through. There's no limit to the number that you can authorize. You can authorize as many as you want. You might find it frustrating sometimes. You'll click on and it'll say you have no publications here. That doesn't mean that you don't have publications. It just means they're not indexed in that exact database. Sometimes people get a little bit down because none of these things are automatic, but there are ways of solutions. So there are solutions. Another option you have is a BibTeX edition, which should be available at most libraries. I will give that the caveat that this is definitely available at TMU libraries. And most libraries in Canada are under the banner, many libraries in Canada are under a similar banner of Omni, using a kind of search structure. And this BibTeX file is relatively ubiquitous, so you should be able to find it in some different way. This is an example from the TMU libraries catalog. But you can see here, if you visit your library catalog, search for publication that you know you've written or your name. Then you select, once you select your name, everything that's under your name should be something that you've authored. I would select all of the results that you've authored with the checkboxes down the side. And then on the TMU Libraries website, at least, you see the three dots at the top right. You click on that, and the drop down says Export BibTeX. And so that'll save a file to your computer. And then you go back to ORCID, and as you can see on the right at the bottom, there's an option in the drop down for Add BibTeX, and that will add that file directly to your ORCID. And that's a really useful thing as well. And it's a good way to, if you have 40 publications and they're not well indexed on the search and link, this is a really good way of putting them in without having to do them manually. There's also the trusted individuals option. And so this is a way of setting an account delegate for your account. So you can set up, so you can ask someone to manage your account for you. And so what it means is that a trusted individual can go in and manage you, go in and add things and edit things in your account for you. Generally, so I am. You can add me as a trusted individual. You can put in my ORCID ID or my name into the box. So this is in the drop down on the top right of your account. You click on your name and there's a drop down for trusted individuals. You can add me if you like. Ideally, I'm very happy to do for anyone in the Bridging Divides community. Generally, I would mostly focus on TMU faculty, but this one, I believe, there's no trace in terms of a check mark or any kind of institutional connection. If you're not, if you could also ask a librarian at your current institution whether or not they do this kind of thing. There may be those options too. Even if a librarian has an ORCID account, they should be able to act as a trusted individual. And if you do want me to act as a trusted individual, then you also need to send me a current CV so that I know what I'm updating and setting this up. Um, There are also other ways to add content. As I said, there's you can add content as with the PubMed ID. So if you're working in the medical fields, or if you have a publication that's in PubMed, that will have a distinctive PubMed ID. It's a short series of numbers, so you can take that and drop it in. You can add manually, as I said. You can also add by DOI, or Digital Object Identifier. So the DOI is very important. So most publications now will have a digital object identifier if it's published digitally. Some older items will not, and some smaller publications. So if you're publishing in a journal that does not meet DOIs, then you can't get them. But if you do have it, the DOI will always start with the number 10. It'll be 10 dot, and then there'll be a series of numbers with some slashes in there. And what that is, that digital object identifier sends people directly, not just to the journal, but to your specific publication or chapter. And so you can add by DOI. If you have that DOI, you can just put the link, which is probably something like doi.org/10 dot, things like that. Yes. Okay. So the question about working papers to add DOIs. Yes. Is there an easy way to add these to the ORCID? Okay. So in terms of just asking the questions about things that don't have DOIs. There are a few different ways that we can do that. One is, so my fourth point here is repository sync, is that at TMU we have a digital repository called RShare, and so this is an optional area for all faculty members or all members of the TMU community can go to RShare. I'm going to put that in the link there in the chat there, and you can sign into RShare, and so. One way around it is that we do add working papers to RShare as our digital repository, either as a PDF or as a link out to the published page. And by adding it to RShare, it will mint a DOI. And then the DOI will send people over to RShare, which will send them back. So and by adding it that way, that will also add it to the library catalog. So it's a little bit roundabout, but if you don't have a DOI that exists, you need to mint one, and that costs money. And so the easiest way to do it, the way the library does it, is we do it by having this platform for all our community members to participate by joining into. So you just go over to that website and then click log in at the top right hand corner. Once you've done that, the other really useful thing to do is to go into your account and add your ORCID ID to your RShare account. And by doing that, anything that you add to your RShare automatically dumps over into your ORCID. And that's a really useful way of ensuring that the work is available for you. In terms of maintenance, you might find sometimes that you'll do a sync or you'll bring things over from BibTeX or the like, and there'll be duplicates. It could because it'll be indexed in multiple places, or there'll be a slight variance in the metadata or the title, and so it will think it'll two different options, two different things. What you can do is you can select both of those items and merge them together in your area. Or there is also a manage duplicates button. It's a big blue button that will show up anytime that it senses that there are duplicates around. And so that's a really simple way of doing it. And in terms of maintenance, generally ORCID is a fairly low maintenance area. You don't necessarily have to be on it all the time, but I always suggest to sync up with your annual report. Um, uh, is to make sure that you're like whenever you do have a new publication, just check on ORCID or make sure that it goes on ORCID. I always suggest getting it all set up, have everything you've ever done in ORCID, and then it's just a matter of adding anything new that comes in. And generally, I would always sync it up to the annual report at the end of the year. Um, I've already talked about this a little bit here, so I won't dwell too much, but I can, as the affiliation manager at TMU, I can add education, employment, service, and awards through the education manager bulk upload. And that's something that if you're interested in, please reach out individually to let me know if you're interested in doing that, and I can help manage that. This is not an automatic process. I don't do it for everyone until there's a request comes in. In order to do that, you do need to have opted into the affiliation manager. And if you haven't got that yet and you're part of the TMU community, please let me know and I can do that. If you are not part of the TMU community, I would strongly recommend checking in with your scholarly communications librarian at your home institution because they may also have this available to you. If they don't, suggest it because it is something that is very useful. And more university libraries are starting to build into this. So in terms of best practices for using your ORCID, populating your ORCID profile as much as possible, as I've said, making sure the information is out there so that you're easily identifiable. Add your country, your affiliations, your works, your keywords. This is very important, just as I said, because there are a lot of researchers with similar kinds of names, and you want to make sure that you are who they're looking for if they're looking for you. Spend some time resolving any errors in your metadata. So if you notice that there are certain kinds of areas, links, phrases, a lot of things are scraped by the bot. So if the bot scrapes incorrect information, or incorrect authorship or whatever, you can go in and manually edit that without any problem. You can add additional information, things like that. So you could, if for example, some people like to in a heading of a book review, they like to add the phrase book review just in brackets to say this is a book review. I didn't write this book, but I reviewed this book for a journal. So I'm going to put book review in the title of the area. So make that it doesn't look like I'm saying I wrote this book, but sometimes the heading that will come in the scrape will just be the title of the book, for example. So resolving those areas. I also really strongly suggest disseminating your ORCID on any communications that you have, putting it as a line on your CV or in your email signature is a really reliable, universal way of understanding that this is yes, good question. Yes, editor. So there are a lot of different areas that are available. I'm just going to jump back to my page here, and so if I come down here to add a work here, you can see. So when I add manually, there are a lot of different ways, things to go in, and this is a good opportunity as well for me just to demonstrate that there are so many different kinds of work types. So you can do so there are academic publications. The standard three are here: journal article, conference paper, or book chapter. But if you've written a book, or if you want to upload your dissertation or thesis, if this is a preprint or a working paper, so all of this sort of stuff, and this sort of goes back to Nicholas's question earlier about the working working papers is you could also manually add a working paper here very easily. You would add a working paper here, and then you would add the link to here. You would put the publication date and information. And then down here, in terms of your contribution to the work, the role, you can say, what did I do on this role, on this job? Some of these are fairly broad, I'll admit. They're a little bit problematic, but generally you can add a lot of information. You can add a citation, and a lot of different kind of content here. And then also the work type. There's a lot of different kinds of things: book reviews, transcriptions, disseminations. There's creative, that's a new thing, and a lot of data, legal, and IP. So a lot of different ways that you can bring things in. And essentially, you can add anything you want. If you wanted to add your lecture notes for a presentation that you gave, you can do that. It's essentially, but it's important to remember that ORCID never stores anything. It only links out to things. And that's really important. There's another question. Right. Okay. So, yes, this is always a question when you're joining into ORCID. And so generally what you can do is yes, so you should be using your institutional email when you're connecting to ORCID. So there's a question here in the chat about what happens when you don't have access to your previous institutional email. And this has been a big problem here at TMU for everyone whose institutional email is Ryerson, because obviously those email addresses don't work anymore. So if you have to receive an update, password reminder, there's that can be a problem. But generally, I would suggest you could reach out to ORCID. I find that their support is not bad, not bad. It's certainly not as bad as Google Scholar, but it's so you could reach out to them asking them for access. What you can also do is create a new account with your new institutional ID. That means there'll be two accounts out there, and then there is guidance that's available for. Let me see if I can find it for you very quickly. There are profiles. I have it available here. Okay, so I'm just going to put this here in the account. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the link. If you have more than one ORCID ID, then it gives you the way to do it. You sign into the one that you want to keep, and that you can flag the one that you don't, and then that will kill off the other one for you. So yeah, so ideally you should use an institutional ID, but you can also use just a Gmail account. I would always suggest adding an official email, like a verified email, to a personal, like a Gmail account or something like that. You don't have to show it, but that means you can get access to sign in. That's really important. So then if you lose access, if you change institutions and then you realize, oh, I haven't worked there for a year, but now I can't get in, that's the way to do it. Add a verified Gmail account. Okay. Nearly done. So I'll just finish up what I was going to talk about. There's more information here on ORCID. At TMU Libraries, we have a library guide, a research guide that I've built just with questions about ORCID and different kinds of things that can go on there. So that link there it will be available in the slides, and you can check that there. And if you need more information or a training or another work session, please reach out to me. My email address here is tobymalone@torontomu.ca. Here is the you're welcome. Here is the QR code again for this presentation if you're interested in revisiting it. There are many notes in the underneath, but not under every slide. So hopefully it's easy enough to follow. And if you have questions about any of it, you can just reach out to ask me. So I think we have about 10 minutes. I know I went quickly. There's a lot to talk about, but I'd love to be able to spend 10 minutes. If there are any other questions, people feel free to unmute and ask the question or ask it in the chat. And I think we're going to stop the recording now. So I'm going to stop